Management of your time is critical to your success. What I'm going to describe today is essentially the ideas and concepts I've used in my business, as well as those I've taught other agents to work with as well. Mastering your capability to be efficient and get every last second out of the day is going to make, I think, a tremendous impact on your ability to help more people and sell more insurance. So the first thing I think, and again, this is kind of coming from my kind of weaknesses in life. What I have noticed in modernity here is we're constantly distracted by all sorts of things at all hours of the day. And it's not just like what the spouse wants us to pick up after we're done working for the day. It's Facebook, it's social media, it's YouTube. And I think a really important component to your success is to, when it's time to work, specifically set aside distractions and with blinders, focus on the one thing that you need to accomplish for that day. For example, right now we're working, right? We're kind of prepping ourselves for the work that we're going to do, which I think is a good thing. It's kind of like the warm-up session here, right? But starting at 9 o'clock, everyone who has the ability to buy leads, who has leads on hand and can work, should be working. You should be working, in most cases, at least a normal 8-hour workday, if not longer. And only within those periods of time, that's what you should be doing. I think one of the things that deters agents, and this is kind of a silent killer of new agents that come into our business model, and certainly pretty much any of the insurance sales models that are out there, is you are entering a world of entrepreneurship. And ultimately, while it's appealing for many of us to not have bosses breathing down our back, having to report to meetings that we don't care about, or, listen to people drone on about mission statements, the truth is that there's something that's lost when you do go into an entrepreneurial mode. It becomes this business, as many of us know here on the call, have been doing this for a while. It's a highly a Lone Ranger type of profession. And you don't have the same outside pressure to be accountable. So you have to take these intentional internal steps to be accountable to the claims of which you want to accomplish, that being success in this business, to have a great income, autonomy, freedom, et cetera. But it takes a level of personal discipline that really is hard to find, if even in just a normal job. So where am I going with this? The point is, this is one of those examples where it's very easy to cut out at lunch and take a 2-hour lunch, take it easy for a while, get away from the grind of the job. Maybe you had a couple of rough appointments in the morning. And what happens over the course of weeks or months of this, you've lost out on hours and hours of time, not only to sell people and help people with insurance, but I think with those little breaks like that, or distractions, I should say, are going to take away from your focus and effort to accomplish a task at hand, which is helping as many people for the allowable time every day. So it could be, and I'm not just talking about like a prolonged break or, doing something other than working. I'm talking about even the little things that cause you to lose the momentum. The urge to check your notifications on your phone for whatever social media you're on, allowing your family to disrupt you to such an extent that you lose focus on what it is that you're doing. I mean, at some point, all of us would rather, right, talk to a family member while we're on the phone trying to set appointments after getting screamed at for a while, right? But we can't let those distractions deter us from the goals that we set on a daily basis to accomplish. So I want you to, as kind of homework here, it's the first part of this huddle session, is think about the things in your life that are distracting you from accomplishing the goals that you have. You might just have, most of us have maybe 1, 2, or 3 things, and plot a strategy to put blinders on and avoid those things. Maybe it's social media for you. Maybe you're working from home and you have no set standards or rules for your family to, respect the fact that you're not just because you're at home doesn't mean you're not at work, right? So you need to define those boundaries and make sure that you're allowed to focus on the task at hand. Again, because without focus, as you know, I've talked a lot about this, focus is critical to your success, and without it, failure is much more likely. What are the first things that we have to do to be successful? the first thing is prospecting. It's talking to people. Never lose sight of that. One thing, again, another idea that comes into my mind that is correlated with first things first is avoidance behavior. This is activity that is not directly related to the prime directive, which is see the people or talk to the people in order to sell insurance, right? So what's an avoidance behavior? Once you're ready to sell and you've spent your first 2 to 3 weeks preparing, practicing the script and being ready, it's avoidance behavior to think that any more practice is going to make any difference to your career. There comes a time when it's time to work. It's time to sell. It's not time to practice anymore. I'm not saying practice is bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying there's a time when you got to pull the trigger. You got to go take what you've learned as incomplete in your mind as it is, and then apply it. And then your next beginning of learning starts when you start getting feedback from your real life experiences. Okay. And this is for some people who are perfectionists or that type of mentality that won't take action and just wants to aggressively get ready for an endless period of time and will never set a deadline. This is critical for you. So if this sounds like you, if you're new around here, again, please understand, you want to study, we want to prepare. I don't want to throw you into the deep end of the pool before you've learned how to, do a single, swimming stroke. But there comes a point when you've done enough, and there's very little you're going to get out of another practice session or, reviewing the material. You've got to take a plunge, right? And that's a big avoidance behavior thing that you got to be prepared for. Another thing that is useful too, if you can help it, for me, when I was in the field, like I was always thinking I'm against the clock. I'm fighting it against the clock to get to all of my appointments for today and to see as many people as possible. And everything else took a back seat. Even things like misdrafts, admin stuff, that kind of thing. That stuff I actually relegated to a different day. So if I didn't have my, let's say, person to make calls, I would sit down on a Friday for a couple-hour period of time. I would schedule and block it off. Then I would do my follow-up work. Then I would call my carriers, et cetera. It's, if possible, it's best to schedule that work for one day in the field or one day of the week, maybe near the end of the week, probably near the beginning of the day. Because one of the things with any kind of carrier work and admin work, guess what happens as soon as it's 11, 12, 1 o'clock? It's really hard. In many cases, you spend 90 minutes on the phone, like with Moo, just to get some basic question answered, right? So if you do your admin work earlier, like as soon as the company's open, that's when you're going to get the most done in the quickest time without all the call waiting, okay? You can also, it depends, again, maybe you want to do admin work in the morning for 30 minutes from like 8 a.m. to 8:30 or 8:30 to 9 a.m., whatever time zone you're in, before you start getting on the phone or starting to go see people. I do think, though, one of the things about admin work you got to be careful with, and this is kind of why I prefer the end of the week strategy for a couple of hours at a time, is that I really want you in the field as quickly as possible or on the phone talking to prospects as quickly as possible. This admin work can delay longer than you think, can take longer than you think, and delay your start time on the phone. It can also put you in a bad mood because admin work usually isn't good. It's usually some kind of activity that's frustrating and distracting, right? So consider, if possible, depends on the urgency, of course, to schedule a time off in your day to do the admin near the end of the week or at the beginning of the week or at some time where you can get it all done and wrapped up and then you can move on. So prospecting wise, if you're not like me, which is it's 9 o'clock, I'm going to do everything I conceivably do to prospect and close business. I don't know how much numbers it's going to be. I don't know how to, I'm just going to do it. If you're not motivated like that and you need a number, so you need to decide on what your activity per day is going to be. So for example, if you're on the phone, I would start with 100 calls daily, just as a starting point to see where things stand. This is if I'm doing telesales, I'm dialing on the phone, I'm trying to do full presentations. Make it your goal to complete 100 calls daily. A couple of things on calls. A triple dial isn't 3 dials, okay? A triple dial is 1 call. So you need to triple dial 100 different names, right? Does that make sense? Or 100 times, okay? If you're door knocking out in the field and you're putting in a full day of work at 300 ringtones or whatever, yeah, whatever. So you should triple dial 100 times, essentially a day. Now, if you're door knocking, and again, it depends on if you're door knocking exclusively, depends on if you're door knocking in conjunction with appointment setting. I would try to go for 10 door knocks a day, okay? That might be a lot, that might be a little, but I think that's a good starting point. That's a good starting point. And what will happen is and this is the other half of the analysis that we're doing. These are some basic goals to have to start with. But what you need to be doing is actually tracking your activity. What is going on, and more importantly, how much activity, the inputs, right, the calls or the knocks, do I have to do to run an appointment, right? And what you need to do to track this is there's an activity tracker on the resource section of the training website. If you look in the menu, you see resources, look for the activity tracker. It's set up for 2022, and track your activity that you make. And what will happen after a couple of weeks to a month, you'll start to arrive at averages. And you'll see that for every, let's say, 5 knocks, you get an appointment, right? Excuse me. Or if you're telesales, for every 25 calls, you run a presentation, whatever it is. Or if you're setting appointments to see people face-to-face, for every 20 calls, you set an appointment, whatever it is, right? The point is, you'll start that process of tracking the numbers, and we'll start to discover really what kind of activity we need to get the result that we want. In this case, in the beginning case, a presentation. And from there, what's cool, we can start to adjust the calling activity up and down. So maybe you want, let's say it takes 20 calls to set an appointment, you're face-to-face, and you want 5 appointments a day. Well, 20 times 5 is 100. So all you need to think about is, my goal is to conduct 100 calls, and I know that on average, I'll hit my goals for the day. So that's what you need to think about. That's what you need to do. Likewise for telesales. The point is, I can give you some estimates on numbers to do to start with, which is good. But the next step is to track them for yourself and see what your ratios are, what it takes to run an appointment, what it takes to, sell over the phone, to have a full presentation over the phone. And then you can just adjust accordingly. It's pretty cool. Okay. And from there, we can derive our daily goals. And I think what happens full circle is that once you've done this, once you know what activity you need to do, once you know what kind of numbers you need to hit on a daily basis, you're going to be that much more inspired that when you get out there and you seemingly get the lack of motivation, the frustration, the talk in your head that tells you, the devil on your shoulder that tells you not to work and go do something else, that you now know what to do to overcome that. That if you just follow the system's very predictable. That, granted, maybe every day is not exactly, you'll see the same amount of people every single time, but over the course of weeks to months, the numbers will work in your favor and you'll get the kind of results that you want to see. Conclusion: focus, cut the distractions, save recreational activity for recreational activity, and do work when you're supposed to do work. Schedule time to not just work, but to also do admin time or even just non-work time, and track your numbers to derive what it takes to get the goals that you want. And then find from all of this that you'll have clarity and direction on what you need to do every day. And that will give you the confidence, I think, ultimately, to hit your goals on a daily basis. To then, of course, daily goals add up to monthly, quarterly, and annual goals.